This is the spiritual samurai scribe. Yesterday, I posted a throwback video about how I talk about how I use my past traumas to elevate my IQ and spiritual senses. So somebody left a comment that really had me thinking that I could actually make another video really going deeper into what is going on here, because now we're going to be addressing the monitoring spirits and how it follows us across our past traumas. So this person said, do you think in the spiritual world, since they know you were abused, that you attract them more who knew that information? And that right there is that actually, when I read that, it prompted me to really think for a moment as I was contemplating on how this transpired and how that happens, and our awareness of these things can actually, how we can better protect ourselves, because these things never go away. And for as long as you have these wounds and these past traumas, especially when your wounds are not healed, not even close, it's good. The attacks are going to be more intense. You're going to actually feel the impact of those attacks for as long as you live. So I think that is very important to really go into depth about this, because this is a layer of spiritual warfare. And as you know, spiritual warfare has plenty of layers. It's very multi-layered. I mean, there's so many things about not only the universe and the realm that we're in right now, but also who we are. Understanding who we are is a huge thing, and what kind of doors we're opening. Now, one thing I will say is that to begin with that first question, what comes to my mind is basically, whenever there is a traumatic experience, an injustice, those things break divine order. All right, so when you think about SA, especially SA during childhood, it's very wicked. So what it does is it opens portals, right, throughout your life. And then another thing that happens is that your temple has been tampered with by that wickedness that they try to force upon you. And then you combine that with the narcissistic abuse, psychological abuse tactics that they put on you for you to take on the blame, the shame, the guilt that they try to put on you. They try to project, they try to put that on the victim, on the survivor. And that's why the survivor, they forever live with that sense of shame because of what was done to them. This is the kind of baggage that does not belong to the survivor. So there's that. And then on top of a lot of strange demonic encounters and supernatural experiences in some cases, especially if this person was abused by somebody that is into that kind of thing, they can do that as well. So it gets really, I mean, it goes deep, but what I would say is that the act of going through a traumatic experience like that, especially when it comes to SA, it opens doorways, portals throughout your life. And as you get older, if you remain unhealed and unaware of the darkness that is literally flooding all around you, you're being caved in by it, you can become a part of it. That's why some of us, we actually were supposed to be a part of the darkness. There's been times in our life where we've been, really, it's almost like the enemy really wanted to push us into that realm, in whatever way that shows up for you. Because that's the whole point of these traumatic experiences, is to push us away from the light. I mean, what faster way to dim a person's light than to essay them when they're young, very young? That there's a reason why they call it corruption of the youth. They call it robbing a child of their innocence. It does that. It does a lot of damage to you in so many different ways, And so when this happens, I would say that from my understanding thus far is that I think that in the spiritual realm, when you go through abuse, especially at the SA, there's an energy behind a person putting their hands on you, especially when they come with malicious intent. Okay, so when that happens, now that dark and evil energy is transferred onto the child, and now they start to absorb it. And when you carry that on, now you have all these openings throughout your temple and throughout your life, to where now other abusive people, so-called narcissists, sociopaths, whatever you want to call them, right? Now other abusive individuals throughout your life, they can smell that, because it's almost like these abusers, they leave their mark on you, and I like to call this, I basically call it the curse mark of SA, because it's almost like they do mark you, and that marking symbolizes the opening of those portals that causes a lot of destruction to come into your life. It kind of sounds a lot like witchcraft, because in the way it is, because abusive actions done against the youth, I mean, that's a breaking of divine order, divine law. I mean, that's one of the most disrespectful things that a person can do to God's creation, is to violate it in that way, destroying someone's innocence, before they even have the ability to develop. That is a very wicked thing to do, because their brains get messed up, and the spirit, I mean, that's intended to really kill the light from a young person. Okay, so it's extremely wicked, and because of the nature of that being wicked, and the breaking it's going to cause a lot of problems for that person, the survivor, and so when they leave their mark on you, that curse mark from SA, especially when it's if this person goes through it more than one time, every time you're being broken spiritually and psychologically, and then you grow up with this, and you grow up with other things as well as the psychological. You combine that with narcissistic abuse. One of the most damaging things that they do is gaslight you out of these experiences. They'll try to gaslight you and try to make you believe that you weren't abused, when indeed you were. And that's another layer to it, and so that, imagine you gaslight somebody out of the fact that they have been abused, and so they live their life questioning themselves and not being able to trust their own judgment. So now that opens them up for more abusive people to come and take advantage of them, because now they're like, oh no, that wasn't that. It wasn't like that. You start to question yourself. See, these abusers from your childhood, they train you to question your own reality. That's right there. That is an example of how damaging narcissistic abuse is, especially when it's paired with SA or physical abuse. Anything that is physical in that nature, couple that with the psychological warfare that comes with that, especially if that abuser is also into the dark arts. Yeah, it gets even more intense with that, you know what I mean? So I mean, it goes deep, it goes really deep. And another thing I would say is that when the abuser or abusers leave you, when the abuser leaves you with the curse mark of SA, which there's a lot of openings around you, but and when you're young, you don't know that, right? So now you have the gaslighting, right, where you don't even, they're trying to really, it's almost like they're trying to disarm you, right? Because gaslighting, along with the other dark psychological tactics, that is intended to disarm you, right? So that way you're not aware of what's happening. So it makes you more open to other abusive people, and abusive people can smell that. When you have all those openings, imagine, I got an example. When you have all those openings, it's almost like you're being put, and you have to live this life. It's almost like you're being put in a ring, a fighting ring, with all these openings, and you don't know how to block it because you have not learned how to defend yourself because you weren't old enough to do so. And so you're being hit from all types of angles in many different ways. You're basically getting beat, whether it's spiritually, SA, whatever, physical. This is a metaphor I'm describing, but I'm just it's describing how when you have openings and you're not aware, first of all, you're not even aware that you're in a fight, right? Because they keep telling you, oh, it's not what it looks like. That's not what, the gaslighting, right? So you don't even know you're in a ring, but you're in a ring nonetheless. And now you're being beat from all different angles and you don't know why, what's going on. You have all these openings and you don't know how to block it because, for one, you don't even know you're in a fight. That's the damage of gaslighting, is that you're not prepared to do anything because you don't even know that there has to be something to be done. And because you're young and innocent and you don't even have the ability to fight back because you're defenseless, you're basically, man, you're going through a lot of abuse, right? And it's very traumatic to navigate your early years, having all these openings that predators can clearly see, and they take advantage of it. And any opening that they see, they're going to capitalize on it, even if it's not a fair fight. No, this is not a fair fight. So no, this is not a fair fight. And I'm going to emphasize that. So these predators, these abusers, they're very aware when they pick their targets, especially when these targets are not even of age. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. And when they see those openings, they're just thinking about capitalizing off of you. They teach you a blind obedience, right? Blind obedience, even to corrupt authority. That they train you to be like that. But when you break out of those programs, the abusers can see that. And that's why they attack the most, right? They attack you the most. And then that's when they get more... that's where all the gang stalking comes into play as you get older, right? Because as you get older, you start to break away from that. So even if you have traumatic experiences, you know the truth, right? You know from inside, especially if you carry a light. So if you carry a light, then deep inside, the truth, and it's almost like they can throw all these tactics at you. But the older you get, the more wise you become, the more you rise. And that is when they realize that you're literally cut from a different cloth at this point. And then that's where the gang stalking can also ensue, and also abusers being sent to your way. And that goes back to how in the spiritual realm, they know that you were abused. Yeah, they know you've been through a lot. They know this. And the fact that you're still standing, the older you get and the longer you stay standing, they're going to be, it's going to be pretty crazy for them. It's going to be pretty shocking. And I know because in my life, I've shocked the hell out of some people. Yes, I have, because they expected me to be in a much worse condition than ever, because 12 plus years ago, I was in a pretty bad condition psychologically, but now, man, I am on a whole different level right now. I'm on cloud 9, and they were not expecting that, and it gets to a point they don't even know what to do anymore. Because the tactics don't work. You already seen everything damn near, and also, yeah, I thank God for that as well. Definitely. You got to thank the Most High for that sense of peace that you achieved, but another thing too, yes, I want to talk about how, when a person is wounded, abusive people can sense that, just like that cliche, that cliche metaphor that they use about when a shark smells blood, right? That's basically, when you think about it, you being abused when you think about it, the act of you being abused, that's basically describes the shedding of innocent blood, because even in the Bible, it talks about that God hates those who shed innocent blood. And that can also, from my understanding, it could also include not just literal violence, but even injustices done against people. Because when you think about SA, that is sexual violence, so that does something to a person. It destroys them, it's destructive and stuff like that. So shedding innocent blood, that's like harming innocent. And what could, honestly, man, one of the worst things that anyone can do is to harm a child in that way. So obviously that would count as the act of you shedding innocent blood. And when that happens, guess what? It's almost like think about that blood that they shed, right? that is out in the spiritual realm, right? Your pain is like it's magnified. Your aura of vulnerability is just easily seen and felt. And it's almost like people can see that. People can smell that. It's almost like blood in a shark infested water, and that these so-called narcissists, these abusive people, these predators, man, they smell that from your aura, because your aura is like, it has that residue of that pain that you've experienced, especially when you have multiple complex traumas and you're walking around with that. It's like having a dark cloud over your head, and they can smell that vulnerability, and the more the better. And that's why a lot of them, they love to go after people that have a lot of wounds. And so this, and when you understand this, man, it saves your life. It literally saves your life. And that's why you need the Most High. We need the Most High more than anything. The more wounded you are, that just means that we need God more. It doesn't mean that you don't deserve. See, here's the thing, especially these so-called religious narcissists, they're going to try to tell you that that you're not good enough. They're going to try to convince you that we're not good enough for God. That's what they're going to try to say. But that's not true. The more wounded you are, if anything, that means that we need the Most High the most. And the Most High will love us the most, especially when we actually want to get closer to Him. We desire to overcome all these things that we're facing. But see, religious narcissists have a way of making you believe that it's almost like they want to convince you to not reach to the Most High. It's like they want to convince you to not reach out to the Most High. Why is that? They're trying to make you feel like, oh, you're broken. Okay, well, guess what? That means I need the Most High the most. And you're not being needy or nothing. It's just, we understand that we're only human, but in order to get to the next level, we need that divine covering, and as long as you're willing, you're willing to reach to the Most High and actually try to, respect divine order, which more than likely, if you're a righteous person, I mean, that would come natural to you anyway. So it's really a no-brainer after that. But again, these religious narcissists, man, do not listen to these religious narcissists that are going to try to tell you that. They're going to try to make you believe in lies that keeps you from actually developing a personal connection with God, because that's one of the biggest ways that I was able to heal and get to where I'm at. So that's what that's about. And another thing too is that yes, I do believe that some people can tell who's been abused, right? Especially people that are very there's people that are very in tune with the spirit realm, right? But you have to keep in mind that when it comes to spiritually sensitive people, you have the righteous and the wicked. So you have to be aware of who has their eye on you, right? Because you could have good people that can sense that, especially if they have a lot of empathy, they can sense that you're a person that's been wounded. And a lot of times they just want to make you feel loved, and sometimes they come with that wisdom that you need at the right time. So it's beautiful, right? There's that. And then there's the wicked, right? The people that can read you, but they only do that with malicious intent in trying to take advantage of you, trying to take something from you, trying to take advantage of your vulnerabilities so that they can gain some energy off of your own, your need for, your desire to connect with someone that cares. And so, or it could go even deeper. It could be somebody that's trying to take you out this earth. That's another thing too. You could encounter soulless beings that are trying to harvest the energy that you have, or they're trying to harvest the energy that comes from your pain, right? Your psychological pain. You're going to also encounter a lot of gang stalkers that can smell that as well, because gang stalkers, man, they're abusive people. I mean, they're abusing citizens for no reason. So yes, the gang stalkers, they're going to have a field day messing with your head, with the neural monitoring, with the dream manipulation. I'm going to have to make a video about dream manipulation, because they can get in your head like that to where they can make you relive. And it's tied to PTSD as well. You know, whatever traumas you've been through, right? They can make you relive that over and over again in your dreams. You know, that's why it's dangerous to getting too close to certain people too quickly, you know, because you might actually be having a gang stalker trying to befriend you, you know. So unless you have a very protective unless you have a very strong divine protection, you know, and divine covering, after a while it does become very strong in your discernment. You'll be able to see who's really righteous and who's soulless, right? Because it's important for you to know that, because at the same time we don't want to just be afraid to live our life, but at the same time we have to be careful with our energy, right? Especially when you're making content. I mean, you don't know who's listening, but I'm not concerned about that, because I already know that for some of us, we've reached to that level where our divine protection is so strong that, man, at this point, we're at a level where now I'm beginning to understand why the Bible says pray for, or what is it? What does it say? Something about, it wasn't pray for thy enemy, was it? I don't know, but it was something that along the lines of, you know, your enemies are going to suffer so much that you're going to have to pray for them, because at that point it's going to be so bad that even you start to feel bad, and you are the same person that you wanted to see divine justice play out, but then you see it and you're like, oh shit, damn, it's a lot. You're looking at it like, man, it's a lot worse than I thought. I mean, you know, at this point, when your divine protection is that strong, you don't have anything to worry about, especially when you are spreading insight that can save people's lives, you know, because there's people that don't know what the hell is happening to them, and it's causing them to give up on themselves. It's causing them to give up on themselves, and we can't have that. So for some of us out here that have all this insight, I mean, what the hell do I look like just keeping all this to myself? I don't care if I sound crazy to the next person. There's people that understand what I'm saying 100%, and they appreciate it, because now they are able to make sense out of all the stuff that's happening, and they're able to take the necessary steps for themselves to make sure that they're solid, you know, spiritually solid. And that's what the enemy doesn't want, you know. It's a reason why some of us, like I said, when you survive certain things, it's up to you. Not only do you tell your stories, but you share, how did you get to this point? How did you make it through? I mean, I even ask myself that, you know, and that's why we do what we do, because we understand that it's not that many people that actually gets to this point. You know, there's people we've met throughout our life that didn't make it. We don't know what's going on with them now, because sometimes people, they remove themselves from your life, and you don't know what happened, and you just pray to God that they're doing better, hopefully, and unfortunately sometimes they don't make it, you know. And may they rest in peace when they don't make it, because there's so many different ways that people just leave the earth because of the traumas they face. It's very, very intense, you know, especially with the ongoing patterns. Again, it goes back to once you've been abused, especially you have a lot of wounds, man. These sharks, these narcissistic, abusive sharks can really smell that out of you. You know, they can smell that off you, and they're going to do what they do. You know, so, and yes, I think that's tied into monitoring spirits. I am a firm believer that a lot of these so-called abusers, gang stalkers, so-called narcissistic handlers, however you want to call them, they are carrying monitoring spirits. So in some cases, it goes back to, you know, people who are spiritually sensitive. There's the righteous ones, and then there's the wicked ones that use those gifts to smell out their perfect victim. And who's the perfect victim? Someone who is very wounded, especially if they have not healed, and if they're young. Because when you're young, you don't have a lot of experience. You haven't been able to spend enough time really thinking about these things that you've been through and actually unpacking it, so that it can turn that pain into wisdom. You know, see, these abusers, they want to get to you before you heal, before you realize your potential, before you can learn how to turn pain into power and insight, you know. So that's why they get them when they're young. That's why they do that, because it's for various reasons. And then it carries on as you get older, man. And it can get really intense and depressing when you don't awaken. It's very sad when you see people and they don't awaken from these things, man. And it's like, it's tragic. But these these abusers, they carry that monitoring spirit. When I think about monitoring spirits, I often think about, hopefully I don't sound too paranoid, but throughout my life, there have been certain individuals, right? Not all of them, but certain individuals that wanted to follow me around, right? And then sometimes I think to myself, could they be gang stalkers? It could be gang stalkers. And whatever the case is, they always have this aura of monitoring, like they're watching me kind of aura, If you go out for a run at a certain place, it could be a park or a track. You say you go to a place where you frequently go for a run, and then all of a sudden you run into somebody and they're talking about, oh, I've seen you here a whole lot. And it's just like, you've never seen them though. I've never seen you in my life, but somehow you see me all the time coming to this same place. Yeah, be careful with that, If you're a woman, then this often happens, but I wouldn't be surprised if some gentlemen go through it as well. You have people watching you, man, and you might think, some people might think I'm paranoid, but I don't take that lightly at all. Like, why do you feel the need to come approach me and tell me that you've been watching me? It's like you can tell by, when you're a spiritually gifted person, it's almost like you can sense that there's something off about this person, and even if you don't have spiritual gifts, I mean, you can tell somebody just comes off as a creep, but the act of you saying that, I've been seeing you, it's like, what the hell? So sometimes people, they give off that aura, just like you give off the aura of vulnerable. What is it? Just like how some people give off the vulnerable aura. Some people give off that monitoring spirit aura. And you know what? I'm gonna make more videos talking about the monitoring spirits, because there's a lot to unpack with that, not only from your narcissistic handlers, from your childhood, from dating and relationships, from your abusers, your past abusers, your gang stalkers, just people that they've had their eye on you for some reason, and there's a reason behind that. So I'm definitely going to make another video talking about that. I've made this one kind of, I've said enough here. So I really appreciate, everyone who was watching. I appreciate every single person that likes, comments, and subscribes and shares. I really appreciate that.